we've been cutting waves for 120 days straight. More importantly, today will mark the beginning of my first short expedition into the lowlands south of the city. It's too risky, he says. Amulet, it's making us sick. We can't afford to split up. There it is again. Closer now. Like a high-pitched death rattle. He's going to split my skull.
And
welcome back. Hey, how you doing, brother?
It's good to see you. It's good to see everyone. How are we doing?
Good. It's been a crazy last 2 weeks. I just returned from vacation and then we went straight into shipping this monster out and making hundreds of people happy, hopefully. We don't know yet because not all the packages have been delivered.
Not all the packages delivered, and not everyone who's got them is telling us about them. Yeah. Because we need reviews on the previews in our Discord.
Yeah. I mean, if people are unfamiliar with what happened in the last couple of weeks, just a quick recap maybe. You wanna get started on that?
Yeah, so I guess the big one was that we spent some time getting addresses for some people in our community who've been supporting us for a while over the last few years from when we were working on the Genesis. And when we had all that in, we sent out some physical previews of Orken. So we sent out a mix to a bunch of people, including versions of the first main book, Field Reports from Edom, our other novel in the sort of first wave, Memories of the Car, in two formats, one paperback and one illustrated. And we sent out a preview of the first chapter of the Orken World book, Orken World for now.
The World of Edom.
The World of Edom, and also
a bunch of other
small stuff, pamphlets, bookmarks, stickers.
Most of it was meant to introduce people to the world of Orken. So as we are pretty tight on the deadline, since we shipped the stuff out, only maybe half of the people have received it by now. I doubt that many people have had a chance to actually go in and start
properly
snooping around.
Because even though it's like a tiny preview of the materials, it's already a huge release to just sort of throw at people.
Yeah. But it's the first time that we're doing it this way. Like we realized that we wanted to start marketing differently, and we wanted to talk with our community in person. We wanted to reach out to people who have supported us over the last decade by reactivating them in a more direct way. And so we're experimenting with our way of communicating with the people who have been fans for a very long time. And I hope people appreciate the gesture and follow us along for the ride into this new adventure.
So I guess first off, some of the people that might be have dragged into chat because of, pinging people and sending out notifications might not know what Orken is and what we're all talking about. So I guess the first question that would be worth getting out of the way, what is Orken as an IP?
So first of all, it's our new universe in which we are going to be playing for quite some time. We decided to leave and put the Genesis to rest. We've done that for 10 years, and we've been in that very grim and very dark and bleak transhumanist future for a very long time. And we had the wish to produce something new for a very long time internally. So we've been pursuing the goal of launching a new IP for quite some time. And that IP in this case is Orken. It's our first approach to the fantasy genre. It's the first time that we're moving away from our home turf, which has been post-apocalypse for such a long time, into territory that we've never really touched, and something that we're really excited about because it's we're treating it with the same type of maturity and with the same type of approach that we treated the Genesis before, but we're absolving ourselves from all the old tropes that we've been carrying around for such a long time.
And I guess what is the story of the setting?
So the story of the setting is that a very expansive, very resourceful, and very industrious people make it across the ocean to find a continent which is inhabited by a race that they've never encountered before, which leads to an immediate conflict. And while this conquest of the new territories plays out from the human perspective, the original inhabitants, the Kar, which are labeled by the humans as orcs or Orken, are fighting back with all they got. So we're showing a clash of two very highly advanced civilizations who have never met each other before, and who are confronted at the peak of their own existence with one another.
Cool. So we talked about what it is as a setting, but what is it as a product?
Okay.
You know, we've been working RPGs, board games for a while. What is Orkin in that sense?
So one of the first things that we did when we decided to move into this new era was to divorce ourselves from the baggage that we carried around with the RPG stuff. As we did the Genesis throughout the last few years, we realized that we are enjoying the storytelling far more than we're enjoying the actual work on the gamification. And so with that out of the way, we decided to create an IP that would rely only on the story itself, that would expand on the world building with each of its iterations, and expand the setting and expand the characters without having to rely on any type of gamified aspects. If people like the story, they can still turn it into an RPG if they want to. But for us, it was important to just divorce ourselves from the burden of having to gamify everything, because it was a very heavy load on the Genesis. It caused a lot of friction internally. It caused a lot of friction with the fans that always wanted more gamified stuff. Even though we, as the developers, we were already one step ahead, and we just wanted to continue building the story out.
Cool. So what makes Orkin different to other fantasy settings out there?
I mean, there's nothing really new that you can invent if you go into creating any type of new IP. But what you can do is remix things differently and make them appealing, because of the way you're trying to think outside of the box. And I really do think that this was one of the very first things that came into play when we started working on this, was how do we make the classic enemy of every fantasy story, which has been around for 75 years since Tolkien brought them to the forefront. How do we make that character type appealing? How do we turn that into the main character of our story? And to do so, you have to analyze what has been done with that particular race in fantasy for the past 7 decades. And you need to understand what you really don't like about it, so you were able to change that. So we did a lot of exploration on, like, what are orcs? You know, how are they represented across various media? And it was very clear from the beginning that there's really only 3 typical ways of them being displayed across different fantasy IPs, and it's, you know, the classic all-consuming Warhammer type orc, the Tolkien orc, which is dark and mysterious and a force of evil, and then you have the Warcraft orc, and all 3 kind of fall into the same patterns and are kind of copies of one another. One shifts more towards, you know, the brutal Mongolian plunderer type, or the other one is like a critical mass type of thing that like reproduces in sheer numbers and is just brutal and inventive. But all those descriptions and all those representations always feel like they're very one-dimensional.
One-dimensional and negative as well, right? There are very few positive stereotypes about orcs in media anywhere.
Yeah, and often the problem is that all the associations that you have around them when it comes to, you know, their animalistic features, they're always kind of associated with pigs, with filth, with, you know, some type of rabidness that just like deglorifies them. And what we wanted to do is we wanted to treat them as if they're a character that requires to be understood, that has a deep and rich and sprawling history behind them, as if they're a culture that has been around for hundreds and hundreds of years, gone through their own history, made it to the top of their own entire food chain all by themselves, built their own civilization off of their own mysticism, spirituality, religious details, and created. We kind of wanted to create a culture or a civilization that is so rich and so enigmatic that when you move into the product, you understand, okay, there is so many layers here that I need to peel off. It's like an onion, and you are being introduced to many different tribes that are all by themselves very unique. They're interacting with one another. They've have their place in their own internal food chain, and so forth and so forth. So it's not just a one-dimensional or two-dimensional representation of a fantasy race. It's a real exploration of what a civilization so far removed from foreign contact could become. And that is really where the IP sets in. That's where the storyline sets in. We're starting at that very moment in time where two civilizations meet, where two civilizations know nothing about one another, which is like one of the greatest parts of exploring the upcoming conflict.
Awesome. So I guess we talked about the two civilizations. What are the two civilizations? So we have the orcs, the Orken on one side, and then the humans on the other side.
Yeah. So the humans, they call themselves the Alemon. They are a vastly hyper-productive, manufacture-oriented society that has adopted an atheist stance towards themselves. They believe that they inherited the earth from a generation of gods that came before them and died, and they claim to have witnessed their death, and that is their call to power. And so with that call to power, they've already enslaved many other nations before that, and they're simply running out of targets. By sheer happenstance and coincidence, they discovered the continent of Edom, which has been going on for centuries on its own, with the dominant race on Edom being the Kar, our Orkin. And this clash of cultures is what we're diving into. Mm-hmm. This is where the story sets in. But like we're from a timeline perspective, we're just 30 years into the conquest. So we're at a very early point where the humans had their successes, but now the Kar are slowly starting to understand who the invader is, and they're fighting back, and we're nearing towards a stalemate scenario.
Awesome. So what sort of inspirations did you take for Orkin? So
originally, I think the story of Orkin goes back in time. The first idea for Orkin came around in 2001 when I just moved to Berlin. I was working as a graphic designer, and I didn't know many people here. And every morning on the metro, I would just make notes and start writing the story. But back then, I was neither an author nor an accomplished illustrator, and so I didn't dare to continue and abandoned the project after just a mere 9 months of working on it. Mm-hmm. But the foundation for it was already laid back then. And then over time, I tried to reboot it on several occasions, but nothing really clicked until 2016 came along, where the current iteration got its first visual overhaul. And that visual overhaul happened because I imagined what would it look like if we take a animation style approach and we drop that on a set like a movie like Apocalypto. Mm-hmm. We take a setting that is so rich and so flavorful and so has so much patina and so much color, and we slap our characters in there as if they're characters from an animation still. And that was the moment where everything clicked, where everything fell into place. The more I started exploring on the style, the clearer the IP became. The more I understood, okay, the way I want to express myself here is we're doing an animation movie in form of stills and in form of stories, and we're showcasing this in the most beautiful manner we can. And that style change allowed us to do some things that we could have never done before, and that was increase the amount of art that is going into the IP. So with the Genesis, for example, all the pieces were always lavishly rendered and lit and composed in a way where you spend a lot of effort trying to make the depiction of a character as realistic as possible, which is just a very time-consuming task. And then the moment we flipped around and decided to change the way the world is represented, we were able to, or I was in particular able to just create far more art for it and visualize details that I would have never been able to visualize if I chose a different style.
Yeah. Awesome. So keen-eyed viewers will have seen on our website there's a link to a Kickstarter pre-launch page.
Yeah.
And we have somewhere on the order of about 300 follows there by now. So why Kickstarter for Orkin? So
we've been working on this for quite some time. I think I wrote the field reports in October 2021,
I think.
Yeah. So that book was the first one to be finished, and then I started working on all the follow-up books. But then Clan Wars came around, and we had to put the project aside, stop midway through production, move on to the board game, do the board game, and then every time I would have like a week here or a week there, I would keep on pushing the project. So for now, we've accomplished so much on the IP itself because it's been ongoing for such a long period of time that we're nearing completion on the first 5 books. And what we would like to do is, of course, we would like to present the entire series to the community and have the help of the community to launch the project into a successful campaign, because it helps us to offset the production costs, and it would allow us to, ship the first wave of the product line out pretty much immediately after the campaign is done. And that's why we chose the Kickstarter route. We just know that we can do that much more if we get everybody's attention on the IP, and we're being helped to push it over the finishing line.
Yeah, and that's what the last 2 weeks have been sort of planning for us.
Yeah,
we've had a big round of planning with everyone brought out to Berlin for meetings and conversations to decide on what we're doing. We've had some really promising meetings with some external partners who are super excited to come work with us.
It's one of the most fascinating parts about this IP, because it's not even out yet. And people cannot even purchase it, but we already have so much traction with outside partners, with third-party developers that are eager to come on board and help us out and create ancillary products for the world of Orkin, that truly believe in the development of this IP. And it's also very funny. It's the first time we've done focus testing as well. Like it's one of the things that we've never done before, but like in the last 9 months, and people might not know this, we had several focus groups that we gave material to read, to give us feedback on, so we could like collect information and understand what we're doing. And this is also one of the reasons why the product line is now so different as it is being presented, because we realized
it gave us the confidence to kind of go out there. We were thinking about only maybe like 2 books or something at the start, and those early responses from people being like, yes, this is incredible, I'm so invested, I want so much more, I loved certain characters so much, I loved certain moments, that kind of helped broaden the horizon. And I mean, even the decision to go with the paperback versions, that came from some of our early feedback saying that, the stories are powerful on their own, like just text.
That was really the biggest eye-opener, because we had like 2 specific focus groups one would get the book with all the illustrations, so they would get the Field Reports of Edom fully illustrated, and the other group would get just a trade paperback. And the feedback was pretty much the same.
Yeah.
People were just talking about the story. The people who got all the illustrations, they were happy to see the illustrations, but they weren't really raving about the illustrations. They were like almost accepting them as a, like
it's the standard SMV.
It's the standard stuff, like cool. I'm happy that it's out there. But people wanted to know more about the characters inside the books. They wanted to know more about where the storyline is going. And that was the moment where we realized, okay, like there's people who like looking at things. There's people who like reading things. There's people who like listening to things. And listening is also an incredibly important part for this IP, because we were also working on a complete audio drama of the first book, which is being recorded as we speak. Mm-hmm. And Andy has been doing some magic on that in particular, and I'm more than happy to be able to see all of that come to life in the background, where we have a fantastic voice actor for one of the main stories. She's done such a phenomenal job reading that story, and the sound designer and Andy, who are working on the entire implementation of that, have been doing God's work. So I personally cannot wait to have people start listening to that and having the first parts ready to go.
It's super awesome to finally, this is kind of the first time we've really been able to get our work in different formats. Like we can really present something in a lot of different ways, in ways that like different people will enjoy in different ways.
It was, a lot of soul searching came along in the last couple of months, where we realized we have such a broad audience, but like not everybody in our audience consumes the same way.
Yes.
And we want to cater to more people and open our doors up to more possibilities. And very importantly, also, get rid of the old RPG stigma that is, SMV does one particular thing, and then they're not continuing it, or they're stuck on the RPG stuff, which is not interesting for a lot of people. What we've experienced with the Genesis in particular was, no matter how much we pumped in, the entry fee into that IP was so high that most people would opt out, even if they were interested in the art or in the story. The pre-investment was so strong, and so we just tried to get rid of all the front-loaded stuff and go back to something that is easily consumable and that slowly becomes more complex over time.
Yeah, and I guess part of the benefit of the way that we've structured things so far is that everything is so easily digestible from scratch, like Field Reports you can read on its own. Memories of the Car you can read on its own. Even the world book, you're still just, it's like a really incredible art book on its own. And then if you really get into the world, you can start drawing them together, and you can see where things start linking up and give you more of a holistic view of the entire thing.
And then having the experience that all of it is interconnected. Then Absolutely. Having, like, if you actually follow along, we treat this IP with the same level of detail and the same level of love that we treated the Genesis with, but we decided that we need to space it out more. We need to learn to pace ourselves in a manner where the consumption of the material is not as demanding, and where it's more enjoyable and not such a huge investment. And if you're missing out on one particular detail, you don't get the entirety of the story anymore, but like actually, you can still catch up at any point in time.
Yeah, so I guess we can talk a little bit about how we're thinking of rolling this out, and then we can start talking about some of the art that we have lined up for sharing. So round zero, I guess you could call it, was the preview wave. So gifts to longtime fans of some preview, pre-release copies, not the completed works, but a good vision of what's going on.
So the first round went to our community, of course, because we wanted to get in touch with our best customers first. We did a survey among the top 2,000 customers that we had, and sent pretty much everybody that returned the survey to us a preview package in some capacity. And then we're going to be off next week because we have to travel for business. But then by the time we come back, we're going to start hitting up the reviewers and the influencers and send those packages out.
And later on in the stream, we're going to talk a little bit about some other things that we've got going on for getting people preview packages, because we've hit some milestones on our community, but we'll talk about those a little bit later at the end.
Yep.
And then Kickstarter, probably we can maybe say sometime early next year.
Yeah, first quarter next year should be safe. We're right now at a very crucial point because we want to figure out the entire shipping and fulfillment logistics.
Yes.
This is like the one thing that we need to make sure we have complete control and understanding over, because if we need to do massive amounts of bulk, we're not set up for it at this point in time, and we'll need a good partner to help us to fulfill the entire campaign, and so that's one of the major things that we're trying to solve in this very moment in time. And so we just said, okay, we're just going to keep on developing. We're trying to get the first wave of products completely done, so by the time we launch, anybody that opts into the campaign can be guaranteed to have the products within a month or two.
Yeah, within months of finishing instead of years, right? Like
exactly.
And we are pretty close to finishing that first wave. You know, we've been estimating around sort of like 3 to 4 months of sprint would take us over the edge and get them all wrapped up.
Yeah.
Because we've got, you know, there's so many construction sites, but they're all in like very advanced stages.
We've been just incredibly diligent with this thing in the background while all the stuff was going on in the foreground. Like we just had our work cut out for ourselves, but like we kept on working and chugging away at this until we had the entire product line envisioned as is at the moment. And so going back to the Kickstarter campaign, the way we envision it, we definitely want to launch with 2 waves minimum and fulfill the first wave right after the campaign, and then use the momentum to continue working into the second wave and potentially a third wave if we can get there.
See how well the Kickstarter does.
Exactly. So that's the current plan of the entire Kickstarter campaign.
Yeah, I mean, it's super exciting, and I don't know, from seeing some of the things that are in the second wave, I'm hoping that we get there.
We will.
I'm pretty sure we will.
Pretty sure we will.
So I guess we can. I've got an eye on chat, so we have a little bit of a question in asking about the audio drama, whether it be on Audible or Spotify. As a question for, we'll need to see what happens. We have options, we have plans, we have people to talk to. We might be, you know, it might be part of the Kickstarter to see if it gets to a certain level. We managed to get it on certain platforms. So we'll see how that goes. There was a question about how the preview books were sent out, but we answered that. A lot of hype for the Kickstarter, which is good. You should keep that up. Do hype for the Kickstarter. We are watching and we are paying attention to who's hype and who's not. And we can't guarantee your safety if you aren't. Anyway, cool. So I guess we can start talking about some of the things that we've got lined up. So
yeah, I mean, people have seen relatively little so far. Only the exclusive few that actually got preview packages have been able to look inside the books. But like, since a lot of people have already seen the trade paperback for this, maybe we should launch into just showcasing what the illustrated version of that will look like.
Absolutely, yes.
And so
so here we have, you know, what the inside of the illustrated field reports from Edom will look like. So
we're talking about an A4 book, tall hardcover that is fully illustrated. Every page is every spread is an illustration that works hand in hand together with the narrative text and explains the entire backstory of the origin of the conquest in complete detail. So I've counted, it's like about 63 or 64 massive 2-page illustrations that I've done for that book in particular. I'm still working on some of the chapters, and not everything is finalized in equal manner, but it's part of that final sprint, and I'm trying to punch through the leftovers as we speak in the next couple of weeks, just to like wrap this book in its entirety. So the story was already done 3 years ago. We had that all covered. Now it's time about like now it's the time to embellish the thing and make it as pretty as we can make it.
Yeah, I guess there is a question that just came in of is the preview complete as text-wise? So the answer is yes.
Yes. So the field reports is a short novel.
Yes.
It's a short and humble introduction into the universe. It's a very unpretentious book. And the reason why I wrote it the way I wrote it is because I want to use it as the setup.
Yeah.
For me, this is like the material that you need to read to understand where the story will go. It's not supposed to tell you the entirety of the story. That was never the intention of this book, but it's supposed to set up the characters and the momentum of the actual story. And so this is basically the teaser, the preamble, if you want to, that you need to read to be able to jump head on into the other material. Because from this point forward, everything else will make much more sense. And so that's why we treated the field reports as the primer for the IP.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess also probably we can think about talking to this that we're looking to get the field reports to be the most like accessible book of the entire line.
Yeah.
In that we're looking to be publishing it on Kindle in the coming weeks. So you know, completely accessible. Everyone can get a hold of it even before the Kickstarter.
Yeah.
Just to see like what the text is, what we're working with, the sort of like the story and the quality we're working with. Yeah. And then when you get to the Kickstarter, you're going to be able to get the illustrated version and be able
which is basically the deluxe format. It's a full-on exploration of every one of those narrative arcs that are in the trade paperback. Hand drawn by me, painted by me. It's really the cornerstone of the IP for starters.
I saw someone literally as I said that we're looking to get it on Kindle, asking about it being on Kindle.
Good, very good.
So someone's ahead of the game.
Yeah, it's going to happen within weeks. It's just a matter of time. We just need to time it properly.
We're looking into like formatting the book properly for Kindle, getting it up on Amazon, and then we can start sending it out and seeing. I guess from here we can maybe an interesting one. We've talked about where the sort of product line will begin.
Yeah.
Maybe we can show off a little bit about how high our ambitions are if everything starts falling into place and we can sort of start thinking about the stuff that Sebastian's been doing.
Okay, so like maybe this is going a little bit too far. I think I would keep that for later.
Okay.
Because what I really want to make sure that people understand is that the way the IP is structured right now, it has an inner logic to it. It tells the story of two conflicting civilizations from two different vantage points and perspectives, and I do think that I want to elaborate on that a lot more. In this part was predominantly inspired by movies like Letters from Iwo Jima and Flags Over Our Fathers, where you have the same conflict being discussed from two completely different perspectives, and for us that was the main thing that we were concerned with in the early stages of development, that we wanted to make sure that both sides are being heard and both sides are being represented properly, that you can understand whatever actions are happening on either of the sides. They need to make sense in a manner that is relatable, and the only way to relate to that is by being able to read about it. And that's why we're cascading through the perspectives in the entirety of the series. We're jumping back and forth from the human perspective to the Orken perspective and so forth. It's a very crucial aspect of the IP that I just want to drive home. So this is not a story that you just read out of the perspective of the element, or just a story that you read only out of the perspective of the Orken.
Yes.
You constantly shift.
And I mean, I guess it's also like interesting that both sides have so much depth to them, I mean, typically with a lot of Orcin stories, it's just the sort of the monolithic bad.
Unfortunately, yes.
Yeah, unfortunately.
And that is the exploration that we did over the years. We developed a culture that is so meandering and so multifaceted.
It's real, you know. It's like the orcs themselves are the protagonists of their story. They have their own drives, their own inner conflicts, their own divisions and fractions, just as much as any sort of human faction in a fantasy series would
Absolutely. And the moment where the Elamon arrive in Edom is a very crucial moment, because there's a spiritual war undergoing amongst all the different tribal societies of the Car, and it's a spiritual war over dominance of one particular totem over another, and that is a very important and a pivoting point in the story, which forces our protagonists, the Car, to come to a new realization, whether to shed the old ways and become something new, or stick to the tradition of everything that was before them.
And of course, then similarly, it's not a case of like we've just shunted the humans into the same position, right? The humans also have their own inner tensions, and they're completely non-uniform. I mean, the entirety of Field Reports kind of displays that there are so many different perspectives on every side. Okay, in that case, maybe we can think about showing off some of the art that our artists are doing.
I think what would be amazing, maybe we jump into Memories of the Car real quickly, into the illustrated version of that, so people just get a sense of how that is going to look. So this is the first wide angle book. I'm going to hold it up so you guys see the cover. This is the first book that is written entirely out of the Orken perspective, or the Car perspective in that sense. This is a very, very dense novel. The trade paperback is going to have around 220 pages, and so will the landscape format, the illustrated landscape format. And again, it's as I said, it's fully illustrated. It's the stories are basically traversing through the book, and the illustrations are carrying the weight of the story.
I guess it's interesting that in comparison to Field Reports, which is a lot of different perspectives in a single space, Memories of the Car is a fully it's a novel with one viewpoint character.
Absolutely,
it follows one story. Is it like at the sort of crux of a particular moment in the Car's history? And I mean, I know how it ends roughly, and it's really exciting. And I think it's really interesting. It's the first time you've written a novel in the truest sense of the word.
Yeah. It actually happened.
It actually happened. Finally, you've had a lot of people saying you should just write novels, and now you're like, okay.
And this is a very funny side note. Like, as time progresses, I've understood that I enjoy writing more than I enjoy drawing. Is one of the funny things that you come to a conclusion very late in your life. I've been an illustrator for 28 years, and there's barely anything that gets me excited about illustration anymore. Like I can do it in my sleep, but like the connection that I have with characters that I develop in written format is a different one. And it somehow grew on me in the last couple of years of running the Genesis, that this maybe is something that I should pursue, and I want to pursue in more detail. And Orken gave me the platform for it. It just really opened up my eyes towards the story needs to be carried by a line author that really wants to explore it as deeply as possible, and I found my own voice here. So it really kickstarted something in me that I wanna get better at as well, and do more of. And this is the canvas for me for the next couple of years. It doesn't mean I'm going to abandon art. I'm just saying there's so many great artists.
I think there would be riots in the streets if you abandoned art at this point. So
no, there's so many great artists on our team as well. They are completely fine in taking over the torch and running with it for a while I'll sit there and hone my skills as a writer.
I mean, speaking of, we might show off some of Yang's things for the World
Absolutely.
Book.
Maybe before we show Yang's, we show the slides from the World Book first, because most people have not even seen what the interior layout of the big setting book is going to look like. And as Andy is flipping through I'm just gonna, also flip through a few things here. Probably nobody is gonna be able to see it from there, but
so this is abandoning the sort of narrative, right? Like this is a kind of stepping through the history of the car, how their world has come to be from their perspective.
It's a deep dive into the continent of Edom. It explains everything that came before the arrival of the Elamon, and it goes into a huge nosedive of the creation myth of the car, their former enemies, how they rose to power, what happened with them over the centuries that they've been the dominant force on that continent. So it's a very, very intricate book, and the way it's structured, and this was also something that I wanted to point out, I've always been fascinated by National Geographic and the way that the magazine feels like an anthropological exploration, and we chose a layout that allows for us to really play with text and image and handwritten calligraphic headlines and small info bits, and then jump back to close-ups of artifacts and architecture throughout the exploration of the book. And I do think National Geographic was one of the main references that I used, and the other one is Dinotopia. If anybody is familiar with James Gurney's original exploration of the unknown continent where dinosaurs and humans live together, I always loved that book when I was a kid because I felt like it was such a it gave such a brilliant setting to anybody that wanted to explore the setting, and it gave you just enough information to get your interest peaked and starting to dig through that. And that's those two things combined are what I'm trying to accomplish with the World of Edom book, really delivering a great tome that dives knee deep into the history of the car and the context of the continent as the story progresses.
And you can even think of it as the travel guide to Edom.
Exactly,
right?
Pretty much. So if you wanted to make an RPG, the only thing that you need is this book, and then
you go.
Then you go.
And it's not just your art that's being featured in the
we have
book.
On that book in particular, I brought a bunch of artists in from the team that are helping out. It's Miguel on a lot of the flora and fauna explorations that we're doing. He's also helping me with a bunch of character designs. Tony has been helping on some of the environment shots. And Yang is actually really going crazy on the architecture right now.
And we can show off some of Yang's.
Show a few of the amazing props that he's been creating. He's really, really, really biting into the material and going knee deep into developing it.
Seriously, every day I open the channel and it's just a new thing is there that I'm just
So this was just yesterday when he finished. Designing the coinage for the culture of the car, and coming up with a system of values and how the coins are being worn in necklaces and braces. So it's just such a rich collaboration to work with that guy in particular, because he's such a genius.
Now these architecture shots,
So what he did, he took all of Chris's very old 2D explorations and he just put them into 3D and built them up in Blender, and then exported them out, and then started cutting away parts and showing the interiors of buildings. This is a temple of the Condor totem, just massive wooden temple. But the shot is just so brilliant, and he went into all the nitty-gritty details, creating the galleries and the understructure of the wooden beams and how everything's being held in place. I couldn't be happier with the stuff that he's delivering for the book.
Yeah, it's insane. It's so cool, and it's really, really I don't know. I think it's really evocative to have it in there. It's like it's almost like mundane things that inform so much about the way that the car live, the things they care about, the things they use. Like,
it goes hand in hand with our holistic design approach.
Yes.
When it comes to developing anything with some sense of maturity, we've had a history of like looking at the details through a magnifying glass, and that's I think what sets our products apart, and always has, and what sets our approach to art and design apart, and always has, because everything is thought out to the very last piece of design. Nothing is there just randomly or because it accidentally fell into place, but things are being explored for a very long continuum until they make sense in the greater scope of things, and then like everything is being pulled together for a final product that feels like it's been art directed from day one.
And I mean, on the architecture point, like we really wanted to go out there on the architecture.
So Jan has been on the eastern side of the continent, while Sebastian has been taking over the western side of the continent, and like just simply went apeshit on working on the capital city of the car, which is going by the name Korkazul, and he's been just going nuts. I mean, he's been building after building, exploring architecture, making all types of shots, doing the temples, doing the stelae, doing the living house, like the normal commoners' houses, exploring all the different factions within that city and how they live together. And now he just like dropped it all into Unreal and is starting to build the entire city in 3D. Maybe we can play that in the background for a minute.
Oh, this is...
that's the wrong one.
Yeah, no, I need a second for that.
You're looking at, yeah, there it is.
Because I need to restart it somehow. Change, so give me a sec, guys, for that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No worries.
We'll work out the tech things in a minute. But yeah, lots of really, really cool things going on in there. I mean, it's so incredible to have like the person's eye view, as you'll see in a second, of like, how imposing the scale is of this city, and how like unique it looks. Like I've personally never seen fantasy stuff that looks quite like this.
Yeah, I mean, it's all based on all the research that we've done over the years on what we want Edom to feel like, and we've taken inspiration. Like we abandoned one type of inspiration immediately at the beginning, and that was we didn't want to do anything Eurocentric. Yes. We didn't want to have anything that like reminds us of Vikings, that reminds us of German castles, that reminds us of anything Napoleonic or anything Gothic. We just did not want these references. Yeah. We wanted to look outside into the cultures that have been underrepresented, that have been not thought of, not considered. And so we looked at the Zulu, and we looked at the Aztecs, and we looked at the Maya, and the Toltecs, and the Inca, and the early Japanese, and the Mongols, and like early Chinese. And then we started seeing patterns in the way people were using certain tools, and that inspired a lot of the resources that we implemented into the culture of the car, and we tried to merge all of that into a holistic whole. Taking, of course, artistic liberties where you need to, because you don't want to be derivative of just one thing.
We're not doing the orcs are all of these inspirations.
Exactly.
We're imagining a civilization developing along these lines and ending up in similar locations, and kind of melding in a bunch of those ideas of like, what were these sort of pre-Iron Age civilizations up to?
Yeah.
And bringing that all together to form something that's like very unique and has echoes of these sort of references and so on.
Absolutely. And I mean, for me, it's a sign of deep appreciation for these cultures. I spent literal
You spent so much
years.
time on these.
Years reading up my references. I don't know how many times I read up the entire conquest of Mexico and the entire conquest of the Andes and the failed De Soto expedition, like literally 10 times over. I can quote it in my sleep. But this is where it gets important. Like you take up that reference and you take up that inspiration and you treat it with the utmost respect. You don't copy it, but you understand that you need to transform it from its original source material and create something new out of it. So that is the approach that I've been following on the entire world building and the entire set dressing of the IP for the past couple of years.
I guess that kind of brings us. There was a question a little while back about what do we think we bring to this universe compared with the inspirations, and things like the Clash of Cultures with the conquest of the Americas and so on.
I know that it can look like, oh yeah, this is just like, it's just a very straightforward IP, but like this is not what it is. Like I do think the idea that there's a conquest of a new continent is it's the setup. It's the bait to get you involved in the IP. It's the early explanation for you to get interested in it. You come in as a reader and you want to know, hey, what is this about? Okay, it's about the conquest of a different continent or through the lens of the fantasy genre. But then as you progress into the story, you see so many layers revealing themselves that have nothing to do with the original colonialist approach, but there are really just anthropological explorations of like two civilizations clashing with one another that are deeply incapable of understanding one another, deeply afraid of one another, and at the same time completely convinced that they should come out as the winners.
Yes.
And that is the strength of the IP. So we're battling, we're exploring fear and confidence of two massive powers clashing for the first time.
Yeah. And I guess it brings us back to, this is something fairly new for the fantasy genre. In the typical fantasy tropes, it's very much, the ancient enemy has been there the entire time and no one's done anything about it.
Absolutely.
Whereas this is like, it's a dynamic problem, like everything.
The goalposts are changing on a daily basis because nobody, like neither the original inhabitants nor the invaders know what the other side will do. And that puts everything at high risks and high stakes throughout the entire development of the story. We think that first contact type of IP has never been really done right or done justice, especially in the fantasy genre, and that's what we want to really explore.
Awesome. Okay, I'm gonna take a little bit of time to look through the chat and see.
Sure. Meanwhile, Andy, do you want to open up like the additional art?
Sure. Yeah, we'll show off lots more.
Just some stuff that is going on in the background. Like there's a lot of things that we haven't touched upon in this stream in particular, and also in all the conversations on the Discord lately. But something that we just mentioned is how deep the actual development of each of the different Orken tribes go, because we're cascading downwards. We're going through their connections with certain animalistic totems. We're going through their connection with certain bloodlines, what these bloodlines represent in the greater scope of things. So there's like so many cascading elements that round off that universe. There's mythology and stories that they believe in that are really enriching every part of that setting, and that is where we see the strength of the IP.
So there's a couple of questions that came in about, the Elamon. Mm-hmm. So a couple of people were asking if we're going to have a world book about the Elamon, and also what the sort of inspirations there were for their culture.
Okay, so the Elamon itself as a culture are inspired by the way you can imagine them is technologically they're stuck in the 15th century, but culturally they're in the 19th century. Mm-hmm. They are pretty much hyper efficient, hyper industrious, expansionist culture with an established system of checks and balances internally to keep everybody loyal and on track. It is a very menacing and successful society in terms of shedding any type of appeal and beauty for pure functionality, and the strength of the element comes from their inventiveness and from their ability to make mass produce stuff without reaching the industrial age, so to speak.
Yeah, they never quite tripped the line on an industrial revolution, but they are an industrial society, sure, like purely by will alone.
Yeah, but on the other hand, they had their own. I mean, it's very obvious when you read the books that they had their own internal abider revolution, which is very similar to the communist revolution in Russia, which gave them a purpose as a nation.
Yeah.
And that is where a lot of the energy and their momentum is coming from.
It's the kind of, the expansionist empire always needs new territory to conquer, and then they stumbled upon it, and now it's their entire society is almost bent on conquering Edom.
Is it the society or the party that makes them do so?
Of course, yeah.
Is it part of the 5-year plan, or is it the society's will? And that's one of the things that we're exploring.
I get there's a comment in there that they never discovered gunpowder. So they're almost like they've reached the pinnacle of development on like steel armor, swords, maces, and so on, but they've never managed to trip that point of reaching the gunpowder age. And I guess it's in comment about the Abider world book. So definitely our first couple of waves are very much focused on, like, Edom is the setting of Orken. And you can kind of start to infer a lot about the society back in the Elamon's home continent. And there's some things that are set there in field reports, but that sort of dedicated look isn't going to come for a while because we really want to spend the time.
It would not help the IP. I'm confident that it would not help the storytelling to lead it back to the original home continent of the element, because as the story progresses, we will see much more of the motivation of getting to Edom from the side of the element, and a lot of that is also culturally driven. It's not just a chase for resources. It's not just a chase for land. The deeper we go into their actual motivation and their actual drive and their self-reflection as witnesses of the death of the gods and their claim to power, the more we also see why Edom is such a paradise for them, that they need to conquer, that they have no other choice but to take.
So Steven Zapata has asked about sending previews out to influencers. If you send us an email, we can talk about it for sure.
Of course.
And also, someone has asked about whether your parents played a role in your life as young artists.
My parents? No, never. No, nobody in my fucking household even cared for art. We didn't even have books. Like I had to steal, as a young kid, I had to steal books from the school library because I didn't have books at home. Like my first books on animals and spiders and prehistoric creatures and Stone Age people came from the school library, and I never brought the books back. That's how I collected my first books, because I was dirt poor.
So someone's asked about how people in Edom conceive time. And I think it's an interesting, more you'll find out when you read the books, but it's actually, I think, an interesting thing that both the Elamon and the Orken conceive of their time so differently. The Elamon, they have like a very defined calendar the calendar reflects their society completely, they are mirrored one to one. Whereas the car think of time in a series of tides, and we're tides and each represented by serious societal shifts and serious car-wide events that completely change the makeup of the entire world for their part.
There's even a beautiful section in the beginning of the chronology chapter in the world book where we explore how they perceive it through the eyes of the totems. And Grom, the ghost raven, which is the big riddler, the wisest of the totems, explains time as a worm that once it's split in two, like one part is eaten and the other one is regrowing by itself. And that there's a very fluid way of the perception of time on the side of the car protagonist.
And then you see the exact opposite in the Elamon, where it's the time is exactly fixed, and they've even recently reset their entire calendar because this conquest of Edom is now the entire focus of their society.
It's their year zero, pretty much. Yeah. Like the discovery of the continent was their year zero, and now they have reset the calendar to to adopt the new timeline.
Yeah. So someone's asked about a magic system, and there's no like magic per se, but I think we could talk a little bit about the sort of spiritualism of the car and the totems that they interact with.
So I mean, the world of the car is purely spiritual, and it's a plane that they call the spirit world, which is accessible to them in dreams or via poison, which is the plane of existence where they interact with the animalistic totems that they pray to, a pantheon of deities that is represented by animalistic figures that all by themselves, each and every one, have their own history and position in the cosmology of the car. But in terms of a magic system, there is no magic. Like the way we treat magic in Orken is same way, and let me just detour here. The same way Hernan Cortez believed that the mountain was on fire when he passed over to Mexico City for the first time, and during that day he was just passing by Popocatépetl, who happened to be an active volcano that day, and he couldn't understand why the mountain was on fire but still covered in ice. So he asked two of his scouts to run up to the mountain and bring him the ice because he wanted to reassure himself that it's actually snow up there. And they did so, and he just still couldn't understand it. So magic is just what you don't understand, what you've never seen before.
It's all something that's real to them, but it's not like reaching out and casting lightning bolts or whatever. It's like a real and important part of their lives that they interact with on a regular basis, and every car is chosen by a totem, and that's like an actual thing that happens to them. And if they're disconnected from their totem, then they start withering away and dying unless they embrace Baku, who we showed earlier, and so on. So it's not something that's maybe the Elamon think that it's some sort of sham religion or whatever, but it's very real to the car and very important to the
Absolutely, car. But in the same manner, everything that the humans do is magic to the car as well.
Yes.
They have never interacted with a civilization that is remotely similar. And they had enemies before, and this is one part of the great prehistory of the car society, is that they clawed their way to the top against many competitors, and it is one of the darker parts of the history of the upcoming world book, where you get to see who they had to kick out of the way to make it to the top themselves.
So someone's asked what your inspiration for the writing style was. So you talked about a couple of inspirations for the story with points of view from two sides. How did you plan the structure of the story so that all the Chekhov's guns are going to fire in all the right ways?
So the way I write is normally I think about a book for a very, very long period of time, and it's almost like a pressure cooker type situation where I have all the ideas falling into place in my head, but I just need to have the right moment in time where I'm uninterrupted for a certain period of time, and then everything gets released and vomited out in a very short in compressed period of time. So the field reports like took what 19 days to write.
3 weeks.
I just sit down and I just vomit it all out, and I don't stop and I don't think, and I'm not second guessing myself. I just like release it all out in one go. Then I hand it over to you. Then we talk about it, and off we go. And the book is pretty much done.
Yeah.
That's how I approach writing. I feel like it always needs to like reach that momentum where it becomes unbearable in my head to carry that stuff around anymore, and then it needs to be written out, and then it just like literally explodes onto the paper, and I'm done with it, and I never touch it again.
Awesome. Someone's asked if we're going to make an Orkin cookbook. So Ersatz asked the question about inspirations again. We've answered that a little earlier, so maybe check the VOD when it's
there's plenty of inspirations. I mean, we talked about Princess Mononoke and Apocalypto. Like those are like very obvious. But of course, I mean, for me, one of the strongest inspirations that I've carried along since my childhood is The Last Unicorn, the animation movie. The Jungle Book, 100%, just for the characterization of animals and understanding what they could be. Period pieces like The Piano, which is phenomenal cinema, and like merging all of that into like a cohesive whole, like giving it all the flavors and all the characteristics of all the things that I find inspiring. And merging that into something that doesn't feel derivative.
Yes. It's like you're taking everything and you're mixing in, but then you have to add in yourself, right?
Absolutely.
And what interests you and what like your thoughts are on this matter. Yeah, absolutely. So someone's asked, will there be any kind of game attached to this universe? I think, what we can very confidently say is not to begin with.
Not to begin with.
Completely it's narrative project.
Yes, it's not planned at the moment, and we want to see what the audience's reaction is first before we lean out of the window and attach ourselves to another engine and another, a rat's ass of problems that we cannot foresee.
I know that for you're not developing another RPG yourself.
No, because I'm also tired of the same trope. It's been like ongoing since like the moment we launched the Genesis. Why is the SMV doing an RPG? They're not even game designers. They're just artists. As if you have to have a PhD to like run a game. So
I've got half of one.
Yeah, so. You do, but I don't. But so I'm not putting myself through that grinder one more time. Like I just like it would be stupid to commit to something that is in the end just limiting you in the way you express yourself. If we end up doing an RPG in this universe, it will happen at some point, and it will happen in parallel to the development of the narrative. And then it can either become big on its own and like people can enjoy it, or if it's not successful, it can be like cut off again. Like a 2 more, and then like the story can still continue, and we don't have to have the same scenario as we had with the Genesis, where everything depended on it being an RPG.
Yeah, like it would have been a struggle to properly release, completely non-game products for the Genesis, because that was an RPG from through and through.
Yeah.
Whereas from here, we're starting with the narrative, we're starting with the art, and maybe we branch into that later. Yeah. There was an interesting point, a bit like the Stalinhag art books. They were successful art books on their own, and then Freya Ligan took them, made the Tales from the Loop RPG, and the rest is history. And I think that's, an interesting idea, but we have to
go that direction. Of course,
we have to wait and see how the Kickstarter does, how the line picks up.
Yeah.
For the Alamon, will there be hints of the other cultures they took over before their arrival to Eon?
If you read the book, they're already in here.
There's hints of it. The Alamon definitely have done their best to kind of stamp them out, but of course...
what we have, the scenario we have is that one of the 3 major cities is fully devoted to, political prisoners that they're shipping out of their own continent into Edom to be, re-educated and to be served as cannon fodder on the front lines. So there's a lot of internal problems on the element side as well. Like they're having their own struggles to deal with. But yeah, Field Reports touches on it, and then the more you read, the more you will see.
Keep an eye on Kindle. And then similarly, there are a lot of info in the former enemies of the car. Obviously, that's what the world book's for.
The world book's there for that.
Everything will surely be answered to your satisfaction, and if it's not, it wasn't supposed to be. Someone's asked about translations in general, so I think definitely not for the first round. Maybe in future, but it's not.
The only translation that I can think of, it would be French, because France has been traditionally and historically our best market, and we have the strongest community on the French market.
Yep.
And for us, it would be at this point relatively easy with the strong members that we know from the community to set up a French translation that is curated and quality assured by the French community itself.
Yep.
That is the only thing that I could see happening. But outside of that, I don't think any other translation, like everything else, we would have to license off.
Yeah, I mean, licensing might happen, but I think our development is going to be focused on English.
Absolutely.
It's what everyone, it's what we all know, it's what we're good at.
Yeah.
I mean, you can translate it into Scots if you want. I can try that for you. So is there something project-wise you hope to take this project into? Graphic novel, animation, music video, etc.?
Yes. I mean, we're pitching left and right, and we're in very early stages of development. We're very early in terms of talking to partners and studios outside of SMV. But of course, if we can make it happen, we will make it happen. And I do think that we want to see this thing come into the realm of animation in some way or another, or into the realm of an independent video game in one way or another.
Yeah.
But that is the long long.
It's like the sky's the limit.
Yeah.
We're working on what we've got, and we're putting out feelers, and we're trying to make things work.
And it's also one of the reasons why the explorations are so holistic. Like we're literally putting that extra effort and that extra mile into everything at the moment, from the audiobooks to the 3D representation of.
We want to prove that Orken works in everything. This is like a completely open for development IP, and we're taking in a bunch of different directions, and maybe someone else comes along and
that's why the books are also so crucial, because they're helping us carry it into all these different places.
Yes.
The books are relatively easy to produce compared to every other type of medium, like on just a difficulty scale and on a pre-production and pricing scale. They're the easiest part. But like if we can manage to build a community around the books and around the IP and to help offset costs, we can actually then devote more time into looking into different types of exploitations and moving across multiple different areas of media.
Yeah. I mean, Love, Death, and Robots has been invoked twice in chat, and it's like, we would absolutely love to, but we can't do that on our own. So
I don't have 100 million laying around, but
I mean,
maybe somebody believes so much in this, that he wants to send me a paycheck.
If you wanna write us a check, we can set it up.
Yeah. But I do think until we get there, we will just continue doing it the way we do it. Like we will keep on exploring and we'll keep on building, because this is where our real strength lies. We're so ambitious in the details and in these stages of exploration. We're so holistic with that once the right moment comes around, we already have everything pre-planned. And I do think this is where we're headed anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've been going for about an hour and a quarter.
Yeah. Is there anything else in terms of questions? Anything?
Lots of hype. Everyone's super excited for it.
Okay.
What importance does the color orange have in the setting?
The most important.
Deeply important.
It's deeply important. It's deeply rooted in the meta lore of the story, and it slowly reveals itself over time. There is a lot of nods and hints in the field reports alone that a careful reader might overlook on first read, that will mean a lot. So I urge everybody that has actually access to the book to read slowly. Read slowly and read exactly what you're reading, because like as you should be used to by now, I have the tendency to not serve information on a silver platter, but to scatter it everywhere.
And similarly, there's nothing, nothing is wasted.
Nothing is wasted. Nothing is there for no reason.
Is it possible to watch the live stream later? Yes. The VOD will go up afterwards.
Yeah.
YouTube does that automatically. Orken merch when?
Probably some type of merch with the campaign.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that we're going to be able to make that. But just give us a little bit of time. We just really want to get through that final sprint. We need your hype right now. We need you to talk about the IP. We need you to, dig into the materials that we sent. We need you to onboard new people that are interested. And then as we come closer to the campaign, we will reveal more stuff and get you guys involved and back in. And then hopefully, all of that will come to fruition in a successful campaign.
And that gives me perfect time to do some chatting about some
Followers.
Yep. So, as I'm sure many of you will know, we recently started a Discord channel for all of our works, the SMV Hub. That's going to be our primary communication method for Orkin and so on in the future.
Yeah.
And one of our things, we released it about maybe a month and a half ago. And as of 2 days ago, we just hit 2,000 members of the SMV Hub, which is huge. And we really want to thank everyone who is in the Hub for hanging out. The community has turned out so awesome, so amazing. Just really friendly, really like high quality conversation, really high quality contribution. So to do a little bit of giving back to our community, we're going to be hosting a raffle for the 2,000 members where, we have so many of the preview materials and we want to try and give some out to our fans. Yeah. So tomorrow in the evening, we're going to have a post go up in the announcements channel that will, if you react to it, you'll be entered into a raffle, and 10 people who have not received preview kits already will be given preview kits.
Yeah, full kit.
Kit. So everything, all of the bits.
4 of the booklets, plus
pamphlet.
The pamphlet, plus a bunch of other goodies.
Yeah. So that'll all be running tomorrow and over the weekend. And just a way for us to signal some appreciation for the people who are showing up, because we're super happy to have them. Yeah, because of course, once we started the Hub, a lot of new people came that had no shop history with us. They never purchased with us, so they were exempt from the survey. Because the survey was targeting already existing customers, but of course we want to get as many people involved in the community as possible. Yeah. So this is a way, if you've never been involved with our previous products, if you never ordered anything from us, but you still want to jump on the hype train, definitely respond and react to that call out, so you're eligible for the raffle. Absolutely. And as a second thing about giving back to our fans, and also for when we're talking about merch. So our Kickstarter, we look so tired. So what the hell? What? Who's saying Someone's saying we look tired and we need to take care of ourselves. Okay. Anyway. So our Kickstarter pre-launch is live, and we want to make sure that we're giving the people who follow us early and get us some of that momentum a reward when the campaign goes live. Yeah. So right now, or soon, I'm not sure when Mui's going to set it all up. If you go to the new channel that's in the Orkin section called Follower Verification, and you take a screenshot of your follow page saying that you followed Orkin, we'll take your details, and when the campaign goes live, there's a good chance that we'll be able to get some free merch to add onto your order. As a pre-launch gift to the people who follow early. Yeah. So, and it also allows us to target the followers specifically on the Discord. So you're gonna get a tag. You're gonna be part of a specific group, and then that particular group can be targeted with news and with additional goodies. So please just do that. Post a follow screenshot. Tell your friends. And tell your friends.
and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, I guess one last question came in. Policy on fan-made content. Could you use the pictures for video and such, etc.? Asking for a friend. I mean, if you're not monetizing it, then I think we're happy. Like the more you use our stuff, the more it gets out in front of people.
Yeah.
And just make sure to tell them that we're gonna go live on Kickstarter if they want more. And I think with that, unless anything comes in the next few seconds, I think we're super happy to have been hanging out with you folk. I mean, it's super exciting to finally be able to like completely talk about all this and really show everything off.
Yeah, it's been a
long haul for getting here. You know, we went over this earlier, but this round of Orkin has been in development since 2016. We were almost ready to go with it in like 2021, 2022. Clan Wars took up a bunch of our time, but now we're going all in, and we
finally got rid of all the extra luggage and all the other parts of the house that were burning, and we can finally focus on this thing for a while and not worry about other problems. So that's a real game changer for us.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you guys all so much for hanging out. We're gonna sign off, get back to work as ever. And, we'll be having a lot more of these conversations throughout the next little while, I think. So
thank you guys.
Ciao.
All the best. Thanks for hosting, brother.
Have
Thanks,
a good night,
Andy.
everyone.
All the best. Take care.
We've been cutting waves for 120 days straight. More importantly, today will mark the beginning of my first short expedition into the lowlands south of the city. It's too risky, he says. Amulet. It's making us sick. We can't afford to split up. There it is again. Closer now. Like a high-pitched death rattle. He's going to split my skull.